We can also look on Thus Spake Zarathustra very much as a semi-autobiographical novel. So, as well as being this great panoply of parodies and parables and mythological symbolisms, etc., we can also look on it as a tapestry based on Nietzsche's own life up to that point. Certain details come through which suggest this quite seriously. If we look at the time that he began to write it in 1883, he was then virtually on the rebound from the fouled relationship with Luz Salome the previous year in 1882. In 1881, he had the first inspiration for the book in the Eternal Return, receiving that inspiration in August 1881 in Switzerland. But he doesn't begin to write it until 1883. And in between that time, there is the failed affair with Luz Salome and Paul Ray. He obviously believes that Salome is to be his disciple, and that he, Salome, and Ray will form a kind of intellectual threesome and pursue his philosophy within that unit. Of course, what happens is that Salome goes off with Paul Ray and they never see Nietzsche again. Nietzsche is betrayed and extremely hurt by the whole affair, and in early 1883 begins to write Zarathustra based on the ideas he first had in 1881. The book comes very quickly in 1883. So one can easily see that Zarathustra, who ascends the mountain in age 30, is there for 10 years before he comes down the mountain at age 40. We can see a rough parallel there with Nietzsche himself, who is around 40 when he begins to write Zarathustra, or at least in his 40th year. 10 years before he started to write Zarathustra, he had written Schopenhauer's Educator and published it. And one might say that 10-year period in between was a kind of cave. And he often called himself the cave bear and looked on his study as a kind of cave. So in 1883, with writing Zarathustra, he is coming amongst men. He is descending the mountain and coming down amongst the populace to give them his philosophy in the form of a novel. It's noticeable that certain characters within the novel could relate to his friends and colleagues and relations. Early in the novel, we hear that his relations in the cave, his only two relations when he's in the cave, are his eagle and his serpent. I clearly connect those two characters with Luz Salome and Paul Ray. Luz Salome as the eagle and Paul Ray as the serpent. After all, he felt that Paul Ray had betrayed him the worst in that he had gone off with Luz Salome, who was obviously the object of his desire. And it was a desire that was both intellectual as well as lustful. So he had been betrayed by his good friend Paul Ray. And he did describe Luz Salome in certain letters as being like a proud eagle. And of course, this links also to two main strands in Nietzsche's writing, which he often referred to. We might today call it the Indo-European and the Semitic. Nietzsche called it the Aryan and the Semitic. So the eagle is a symbol of Aryanism, and the snake relating to the Semitic in the snake in the Garden of Eden. And so Luz Salome is the Aryan, the symbol of the eagle, which Nietzsche writes about in Prometheus, where Prometheus's liver is eaten by an eagle on a recurrent basis, like a cycle of recurrence. And in the Garden of Eden, obviously, the serpent is the betrayer of mankind, bringing sin on mankind. We have the Semitic concept of sin and the proud Aryan concept of the fight for freedom and for higher thought, as in Prometheus. So I see Nietzsche here is dramatizing and, in a sense, having some ironic fun with the idea that his hoped for triumvirate of himself, Luz Salome, and Paul Ray, which failed, is given a lease of life in his fictionalized Zarathustra, where he, Zarathustra, is accompanied various times by his eagle and his serpent. They are his two closest companions. They are his animals. And Nietzsche, as I've said before, often referred to himself as an animal, a famous animal, a cave bear, etc. So I think that is at the very start of Zarathustra, in the prologue, an example of how he's bringing in autobiographical details into the book